Welcome to CNN World News. I'm Orion Banks. I am here to bring you the top stories from around the globe. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share so others can stay up to date with the latest news from around the world. Global headlines. U.S. and China hold urgent trade talks, and Malaysia leaders from both nations meet to stop a new trade war ahead of Trump. President Trump hikes tariffs on Canada by 10% move follows a controversial World Series ad that sparked political tension. Russia launches deadly missile strikes on Kyiv. Donald Trump raises tariffs on Canada after a World Series ad. President Trump announced a 10% tariff hike on Canadian goods, triggered by an advertisement featuring former President Ronald Reagan during the World Series. This move heightens trade tensions between the U.S. and one of its closest allies, possibly affecting businesses and consumers on both sides of the border. Who is affected? Exporters and importers, how Canada may respond, and what this means for North American trade. Russian aerial attack on Kyiv kills and injures civilians. Russian missiles and drones struck infrastructure in Kyiv, Ukraine. Officials say 2 people were killed and 13 injured, with damage to a kindergarten and residential buildings. This highlights civilian suffering and infrastructure damage in the war, which has global implications for humanitarian aid and diplomacy. The impact on civilian life, how Ukraine is responding, and potential international reactions. We hope and pray for peace to return to these countries. Tunis protest over pollution spreads. Hundreds of Tunisians marched through Tunis to protest over severe pollution from a state chemical plant in the city of Gabes. The crisis has now expanded beyond the local area. Environmental issues and citizen protests are rising in many parts of the world. This story shows how local issues can grow into national movements. The government is yet to respond to protesters' demand and how this may affect business and the environment in Tunisia. In Gaza, Israeli military carries out targeted strike despite ceasefire tensions. Israeli forces said they conducted a targeted strike on an individual in central Gaza who was allegedly planning to attack Israeli troops even during fragile ceasefires. Violence continues. These actions affect peace efforts, civilian safety, and the broader Middle East context. How this fits the larger Gaza and Israel conflict, the human impact, and what outside countries are saying. U.S. sanctions on Russia and Ukraine war. The U.S. is preparing additional sanctions against Russia if it fails to end its war in Ukraine. The sanctions would hit Russia's oil and banking sectors. President Trump said he will not meet Russian President Putin until a credible deal on Ukraine appears. European partners are being asked to use frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has wide-ranging global effects on energy, finance, and global alliances. World Food Program rushes aid into Gaza as Trump embarks on Asia diplomacy tour. Aid agencies, including the WFP, are moving urgently to deliver food into Gaza, while President Trump begins a major diplomatic trip to Asia. Why it matters. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza remains urgent, and major global powers are shifting diplomatic focus. This affects global attention and resource flows. What to mention? The scale of the aid effort, the condition of people in Gaza, and how diplomatic moves might influence outcomes. U.S. and China trade talks. In Kuala Lumpur, the ASEAN summit is running, and the U.S. and China are in serious trade talks to stop a big trade war. Top officials from Washington and Beijing said their talks were very constructive. They are trying to stop both sides from imposing heavy tariffs that could hurt global economies. Watch for what comes next when Donald Trump meets Xi Jinping at the 2025 Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in South Korea. Just know big trade deals affect the cost of things. For you and me, let's see what the world's biggest trade rivals are doing to keep the global economy steady. Ivory Coast Election Day. In the West African nation of the Ivory Coast, voters went to the polls on Saturday to cast their ballots in a presidential election. with incumbent Alassane Ouattara, aged 83, seeking another term. Over 8 million people were registered to vote. The election carries big weight because the president's legacy is on the line. Elections shape a country's direction and can affect stability, investment, and people's daily lives. Africans have always been faced with corrupt leaders, making the citizens not to vote their mind. I hope Africa wakes up and gets it right this time. Thanks for watching CNN World News. I'm Orion Banks. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe so you don't miss top stories from around the world. See you then.